For a lot of Americans, the past few weeks have been tough, and the next week is not going to look any better because there's no end in sight to the government shutdown, no firm solution to when SNAP will restart. So a lot of families are heading to food banks for the first time. And I wanted to speak with someone you recognize and someone who knows what facing hunger is like. Actress Karen Pittman is with me now. You know her from shows like Apple TV's The Morning Show, Forever on Netflix. And she also experienced food insecurity years ago and is now an advocate for Feeding America. Karen, thank you for being with me. There are people who wonder, Victor, a Hollywood actress talking about food insecurity. What does she know? How can she relate to my story? What informs your activism around food insecurity?
Well, thank you for having me this morning, Victor, because I know a lot of Americans are waking up this morning watching your show and thinking, how am I going to make this work? I need some help, because I've been one of those Americans. And several years ago, probably about 10 or 11, I was living in Brooklyn with my children. And we were struggling through a moment. It was a transition moment for me and my family. I was having to choose between feeding my kids and feeding myself. I was an American that was nibbling food off of their plates in order for them not to know how hungry I was, right? And so I certainly have had that experience of going to food pantries, going to churches, and putting food in my grocery cart and going back to my home in Brooklyn. And so I wanted to let people know that they're not alone, that there are a lot of us Americans who are here to help them, and that we are at Feeding America undaunted by the task of reaching out and helping more Americans as we go through this challenging time.
Karen, I want you to listen to a woman who was at a food distribution for the first time, and I imagine what she's feeling, so many people are feeling. So let's watch.
Never thought in a million years I would be in line to get some food.
What does that feel like?
It's humiliating. You know, I've been working for 30 years in my career. I've had to apply for unemployment and haven't done that.
And Karen, this really is why I wanted to have you on, because I've heard you speak so eloquently about the emotional toll that it takes to go to that church pantry that you went to feed your family.
Yeah, I mean, I am a graduate of 2 universities. I was certainly one of those women that thought, you know, I can do it on my own. And I realized very quickly that really showing love to my children and taking care of them was reaching out and asking for help. There's so much shame and stigma, I think, attached to it for us as Americans. The truth of the matter is that there is food insecurity in 100% of the counties in America. Feeding America has satellite organizations in every county in America, including Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. It doesn't matter your race, color, or creed. You know, we are all at some point going to need to help our fellow citizens with this, and Feeding America is right here to help them. They are undaunted in the journey of helping Americans figure this out.
And I think it's important to eliminate some of that shame, the humiliation, is to challenge the narrative of what hunger looks like in this country, right?
Oh, for sure, absolutely. We talk about this statistic. It's very important in the work that I do as an ambassador for Feeding America, that 1 in every 5 children in America is dealing with food insecurity. So if you think of 5 children that you know, one of those children, whether they look like it or not, is in a home where they are not always getting the food and nutrition that they need. And it's staggering, the statistic and what that may look like for us. We may not know that these children are not doing well, these families are not doing well, but it's important for us to keep that in mind. I know a lot of people probably would look at me and think, oh, she's never had to deal with that. But in fact, I did for about 1.5 years, 2 years. In 2011, 2012, I was really struggling with food insecurity. I, through Middle Collegiate Church, which is a church that I attended in New York City, would go to the Thanksgiving dinners that they had at restaurants, and would be served food by actresses that I know now that I see at award shows, serving food to me and my children. So it's a full circle moment for me to be sitting here talking to you about it, but I also think it's something that's very much needed to pull the stigma away from what it looks like to be food insecure in America.
Karen Pittman, I thank you for sharing your story. And it is the sharing of the story from people that you might not expect to have experienced food insecurity that can help in ways that the person who receives that blessing may never articulate, but making it a normal thing that people have had these moments. It may not be long term, but to know that it is not going to be like this always. Karen Pittman, again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you for having me this morning.
Certainly. All right, today, millions of people lost access to critical SNAP benefits. For context, here's how many people use food stamps. The latest data from the USDA shows that in May, it was 1 in 8 Americans.
The majority of people who are receiving SNAP benefits are children, right? Followed by older adults and people with disabilities. Majority are working 2 to 3 jobs. They're just not making enough money because inflation, food prices, shelter prices are so incredibly high. And when you have to put 82 and 90% of your income on shelter, it leaves very little. For context, most of these folks are making less than $1,100 a month. So it's incredibly.
2 judges ruled on Friday that the Trump administration must partially fund SNAP, but it's unlikely that'll happen quickly, even though the president, he said that it'll be his honor to fund the program.
We don't know what we do. We're just going to pray to God that these politicians would make up their minds.
Of course, it's not just SNAP that's affected. Other critical programs like home heating assistance are struggling too. Not to mention, so many people using these benefits are also insured through the Affordable Care Act. And as open enrollment starts today in many states, premiums are skyrocketing. Health policy research group KFF estimates monthly payments could more than double next year, in part because those enhanced premium subsidies are ending. And the fight over those subsidies is really what's triggered the government shutdown in the first place. Now, on SNAP recipients, they aren't the only ones struggling, as we know. So are the millions of federal workers who are without paychecks as the shutdown enters month 2. CNN's Lee Waldman spoke with some who are hoping food banks can keep up with the surging need for help.
We're not mad at anybody. We just want to get our work done and get our paycheck. That's all. We didn't hurt anybody. We don't deserve this.
Overwhelming frustration and sadness as a line of federal workers stand in the cold waiting for food in New York City this week.
The last paycheck we got was for 7 days through the end of September. And that's it. But we've been there every single day.
Sarah has worked for the Social Security Administration for 20 years.
This is how bad it is.
Never missing a paycheck until now. Her coworker Caitlin is standing in line too, waiting for produce and shelf-staple items from the food bank for New York City.
We don't know what's going to happen for Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Good morning.
Everything is now up in the air.
This food distribution is set up specifically for federal workers. The food bank expects to feed up to 500 people on the day CNN visited, many of whom are coming on their lunch breaks or before their shifts start for the day, like Christina Deschabert.
It's just hard. They're still getting a paycheck and we're not. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars and we're not making that much money. So to cut the little people down and you still get a paycheck is really unfair.
During the last government shutdown, the food bank for New York City says 18,000 federal workers in New York were exposed to food insecurity, many of whom turned to the food bank for help, on top of the 1.3 million New Yorkers it says it serves annually. It's a challenge they're facing yet again.
A lot of folks that are struggling more than last time.
The food bank operates with little flexibility. The rising cost of food and growing need have left them with little leeway. Zach Hall says he's worried now that 1.8 million New Yorkers are missing out on Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP benefits, this month because of the shutdown.
It's very alarming and very concerning for us. We want to make sure that folks have the resources they need to put food on the table for their kids. Don't want to have seniors making those choices between medication or rent.
SNAP provides roughly 95 million meals per month in New York City, according to the food bank. more than the 85 million meals the food bank says it provided all of last year.
It's hard to think about this.
Thursday, Governor Kathy Hochul declared a state of emergency in response to the SNAP crisis and announced $65 million in new state funds for emergency food assistance, providing 40 million meals to New Yorkers. But Hall believes there's no way to make up for the loss of SNAP completely.
This is an American issue on food insecurity, not simply a New York City problem. SNAP benefits are the key and the critical lifeline to make folks whole in terms of the meals that they need.
Lee Waldman, CNN, New York.